Today we're going to talk about why smart people make terrible money decisions. Picture this scenario. A brilliant software engineer, someone who can solve complex algorithms in their sleep, sits at their computer at 2 a.m. frantically buying cryptocurrency because they read a forum post about the next moonshot. Or consider the physician with decades of medical training who panic sells their entire retirement portfolio during a market downturn, locking in massive losses. No. Perhaps you know a lawyer who can argue complex cases but consistently falls for get-rich-quick schemes. These aren't isolated incidents. They represent a fascinating paradox that cuts across professions, education levels, and IQ scores. Intelligence, it seems, provides no immunity against poor financial decisions. In fact, in some cases, it might make things worse. This observation raises uncomfortable questions. If raw intelligence doesn't protect us from financial mistakes, what does that tell us about human nature? What forces are at work when smart people make decisions they'll later regret? And perhaps most importantly, if intelligence isn't the answer, what is? Today we're going to explore the psychological landscape that shapes our financial behavior. We'll examine how cognitive biases operate like invisible currents, pulling even the most rational minds toward irrational choices. We'll look at how emotions hijack our decision-making processes, and why overconfidence often leads to our most spectacular failures. This isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about understanding. When we recognize these patterns in ourselves, we gain something more valuable than intelligence alone can provide: awareness. And awareness, as we'll discover, is the first step toward making better choices. By the end of our exploration, you'll understand why a high IQ doesn't guarantee financial success, how our brains work against us in money matters, and what we can do to bridge the gap between knowing better and doing better. Section 1. The Intelligence Trap. Let's start with a fundamental question. What exactly is intelligence? And why doesn't it seem to help us with money? When most people think of intelligence, they picture someone solving complex mathematical equations, understanding intricate scientific concepts, or demonstrating exceptional analytical skills. These abilities are real and valuable. They help people excel in academic settings, professional environments, and technical challenges. But money decisions operate in a different realm entirely. Consider the work of psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who spent decades studying how people make decisions. His research revealed something striking. The human mind operates using two distinct systems. System 1 is fast, intuitive, and emotional. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and analytical. Here's the crucial insight. Most of our financial decisions happen in System 1, even when we think we're being rational. Think about the last time you made a purchase you later regretted. Maybe it was an expensive gadget, a subscription service you forgot to cancel, or an investment that seemed promising at the time. In that moment, were you carefully weighing pros and cons, calculating long-term value, and considering opportunity costs? And probably not. You were likely responding to an immediate feeling, a sense of excitement, fear, or desire. This is where intelligence becomes a double-edged sword. Highly intelligent people are often very good at constructing logical justifications for decisions they've already made emotionally. A brilliant engineer might convince themselves that buying an expensive car is a smart investment because of resale value and reliability. A successful doctor might rationalize day trading as diversifying their skill set. The intelligence doesn't prevent the emotional decision. It just makes the rationalization more sophisticated. Keith Stanovich, a researcher at the University of Toronto, has studied this phenomenon extensively. He discovered that cognitive ability and rational thinking are not the same thing. You can score highly on traditional intelligence tests while still falling prey to systematic thinking errors. In fact, Stanovich found that more intelligent people are sometimes more susceptible to certain biases because they're better at generating convincing reasons to support their initial impulses. This creates what we might call the intelligence trap. Smart people often trust their first instincts more than they should, assuming that because they're intelligent, their gut reactions must be sound. They may skip the careful analysis that less confident decision makers naturally employ. It's a bit like a skilled driver taking more risks on the road because they trust their reflexes, not realizing that some dangers can't be avoided through skill alone. The financial world exploits this tendency ruthlessly. Investment products are often marketed using complex terminology and sophisticated-sounding strategies, specifically designed to appeal to intelligent people who want to feel smart about their choices. The more complex an investment sounds, the more it appeals to someone who prides themselves on understanding difficult concepts. Consider the 2008 financial crisis. Many of the most catastrophic losses weren't suffered by unsophisticated investors, but by highly educated professionals who thought they understood complex financial instruments like collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps. Their intelligence became a liability because it made them overconfident in their ability to assess risk. This pattern repeats across different domains. Highly educated investors are more likely to trade frequently, believing they can outsmart the market. They're more susceptible to complex investment scams because they want to believe they're smart enough to spot opportunities others miss. They often ignore simple, proven strategies like index fund investing because such approaches seem too basic for their sophisticated minds. The irony runs deeper than individual decision-making. Research shows that people with higher IQs are more likely to exhibit certain cognitive biases, not fewer. They're better at motivated reasoning, which means they're more skilled at finding evidence to support what they want to believe, while dismissing contradictory information. When it comes to money, this often means they can convince themselves that risky or irrational financial behavior is actually quite sensible. Understanding this dynamic is liberating in a way. It means that if you've made poor financial decisions despite being intelligent, you're not broken or fundamentally flawed. You're human. And your brain is doing exactly what human brains evolved to do. Make quick decisions based on limited information, seek patterns even where none exist, and prioritize immediate rewards over long-term benefits. The challenge isn't to become more intelligent. The challenge is to recognize when intelligence alone isn't enough, and to develop systems and habits that work with our psychological nature rather than against it. Section 2. The emotional brain takes charge. Money isn't just numbers on a screen or paper in a wallet. It's deeply emotional. It represents security, freedom, status, and identity. When we make financial decisions, we're not just calculating mathematical outcomes. We're responding to fundamental human needs and fears that have been with us for thousands of years. To understand why smart people make poor money decisions, we need to understand how emotions hijack our rational thinking processes. This isn't a character flaw. It's how human brains are designed to work. Our emotional responses to money situations happen in the limbic system, particularly in an area called the amygdala. This part of the brain processes threats and opportunities much faster than our conscious, rational mind can analyze them. When we see a stock price dropping or notice a limited time offer, our amygdala responds before our logical mind even knows what's happening. Consider what happens during a market crash. Intellectually, most educated investors know that market downturns are normal, temporary, and often present buying opportunities. They've read the historical data. They understand compound returns and dollar-cost averaging. But when they log into their investment account and see their portfolio value has dropped by 30%, none of that knowledge feels relevant. What they feel instead is a primal alarm. Danger, threat, loss. The same neural pathways that once helped our ancestors respond to physical threats now fire when we perceive financial threats. The amygdala doesn't distinguish between a charging predator and a declining stock price. Both trigger the fight or flight response. This is why panic selling is so common, even among sophisticated investors. In that moment of fear, the emotional brain takes control. The rational mind, which knows better, becomes a passenger. Later, when markets recover, these same investors often feel foolish. They can't understand why they acted against their own knowledge and best interests. The emotional hijacking works in the opposite direction too. During market bubbles, the same brain systems that respond to fear also respond to greed and excitement. The prospect of easy money triggers reward pathways that flood the brain with dopamine. This creates a feeling of euphoria that makes risk feel less risky and makes improbable outcomes seem likely. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio studied patients who had suffered damage to the emotional centers of their brains. Interestingly, these patients could still perform complex logical reasoning, but they struggled with decision-making, especially decisions involving uncertainty or risk. This research revealed something crucial. Emotions aren't the enemy of good decisions. They're an essential component. The problem arises when emotions overwhelm rational analysis, not when they're present. The key insight is that we need both emotional input and rational analysis to make good financial decisions, but they need to work together rather than in conflict. And when emotions dominate completely, we get panic selling and bubble buying. When we try to eliminate emotions entirely, we often make decisions that ignore important human factors like our actual risk tolerance and life circumstances. Smart people often fall into the trap of believing they can think their way out of emotional responses. They might tell themselves, "I'm too rational to be affected by market emotions," or "I can analyze my way to the right decision." But emotions don't disappear just because we're intelligent. They go underground, influencing our thinking in ways we don't recognize. This creates a particularly dangerous situation. When we're unaware of our emotional responses, we can't account for them in our decision-making. We might think we're being purely logical, while actually being driven by fear, greed, or ego. It's like trying to navigate while insisting you don't need a compass because you have perfect directional sense. Consider the phenomenon of loss aversion, discovered by Kahneman and his colleague Amos Tversky. People typically feel the pain of losing money about twice as strongly as they feel the pleasure of gaining the same amount. This isn't a logical response, it's an emotional one, but it powerfully influences financial behavior. A highly intelligent person might understand loss aversion intellectually, but still be controlled by it emotionally. They might hold on to losing investments too long, because selling would make the loss feel real and permanent. Or they might be so afraid of losses that they keep all their money in savings accounts, earning returns that don't keep pace with inflation. The advertising and marketing industries understand these emotional triggers intimately. They don't try to convince your rational mind, they target your emotional brain. Limited time offers create artificial urgency. Social proof leverages our fear of missing out. Aspirational imagery connects products to our identity and self-worth. Smart people often believe they're immune to marketing because they can see through the techniques. But awareness of manipulation doesn't automatically provide protection against it. Your emotional brain responds to stimuli before your rational mind can intervene. By the time you're consciously analyzing the sales pitch, your emotions have already been engaged. This is why financial advisors often recommend sleeping on major financial decisions, especially during periods of market volatility. Time allows the emotional intensity to subside and gives the rational mind space to reassert itself. It's not that emotions are wrong, it's that they need to be balanced with analysis rather than driving the decision alone. The most successful investors and financial decision makers aren't those who eliminate emotions, they're those who recognize and work with their emotional responses. They understand that fear and greed are information, not instructions. They create systems and rules that help them make good decisions, even when their emotions are pulling them in other directions. Section 3. Overconfidence and the Dunning-Kruger effect. There's a particular kind of blindness that affects smart people when it comes to money decisions, and it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of their own competence. This isn't about lacking intelligence, it's about misjudging the limits of that intelligence. The Dunning-Kruger effect, named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, describes a cognitive bias where people with limited knowledge or competence in a domain overestimate their own knowledge or competence in that domain. But here's what's fascinating. This effect doesn't just apply to people who know very little. It also affects highly intelligent people when they venture outside their areas of expertise. Consider a successful surgeon who decides to start day trading. This person has demonstrated exceptional skill in a complex high-pressure field. They've spent years mastering intricate procedures and making life and death decisions. When they approach financial markets, they naturally assume that their intelligence and decision-making skills will translate directly to this new domain. But financial markets operate according to different rules than operating rooms. The feedback is different, the variables are different, and the skills that make someone an excellent surgeon don't necessarily make them a good trader. However, their success in medicine creates a confidence that extends beyond their actual competence in finance. This phenomenon is particularly pronounced among highly educated professionals. A brilliant engineer might assume that, because they can optimize complex systems, they can optimize their investment portfolio. A successful lawyer might believe that because they can analyze legal arguments, they can analyze financial statements with equal skill. The intelligence is real, but the assumption that it transfers seamlessly across domains is often incorrect. Research by behavioral economist Terence Odian found that highly educated investors tend to trade more frequently than less educated investors, and this increased trading typically leads to lower returns. The more confident investors become in their abilities, the more likely they are to make decisions that hurt their long-term financial outcomes. This overconfidence manifests in several specific ways in financial decision-making. First, smart people often underestimate risks because they believe their intelligence protects them from negative outcomes. They might invest in complex financial instruments without fully understanding the downside scenarios, assuming they're smart enough to get out before things go bad. Second, they tend to overestimate their ability to time markets or pick winning investments. The same analytical skills that serve them well in their professional lives create a false sense of security when applied to inherently unpredictable systems like financial markets. They see patterns where none exist and believe they can outsmart systems that have humbled even the most sophisticated institutional investors. Third, overconfident investors often ignore or dismiss advice from financial professionals. After all, if you're used to being the smartest person in the room in your field, why would you need guidance in another field? This independence, which serves them well in their careers, becomes a liability when dealing with complex financial decisions that benefit from specialized knowledge and experience. The technology boom of the late 1990s provided a perfect case study in intelligent overconfidence. Many highly educated professionals watched tech stocks soar and decided they could participate in what seemed like easy money. Engineers, in particular, felt they understood technology companies better than traditional investors. Doctors and lawyers saw their colleagues getting rich and assumed they could do the same. The problem wasn't that these people were unintelligent. The problem was that they confused understanding technology with understanding technology investments. They could evaluate whether a company had good products or innovative solutions, but they couldn't necessarily evaluate whether the stock price already reflected that value or whether the company could maintain its competitive advantages over time. When the bubble burst, Many of these intelligent investors suffered devastating losses. Their overconfidence had led them to concentrate their investments in a single sector, ignore valuation metrics, and assume that their professional knowledge translated directly to investment success. Overconfidence also affects how smart people respond to financial mistakes. Instead of recognizing that they might be operating outside their competence, they often double down. Untier. A lawyer who loses money on a speculative investment might conclude that they just need to research more or try a different strategy, rather than questioning whether active investing is the right approach for them at all. This is compounded by what psychologists call the better than average effect. Most people believe they're above average drivers, above average lovers, and above average investors. Untried. But this effect is particularly strong among highly intelligent people because they have evidence from other areas of their lives that they are, in fact, above average in many domains. The challenge is that financial markets are what economists call efficient to a significant degree. This means that most available information is already reflected in prices, and consistently outperforming the market requires either inside information, exceptional skill, or luck. Intelligence alone isn't enough, and in some cases, it can be counterproductive if it leads to overconfidence. Professional investors understand this. Most successful institutional investors use systematic approaches, diversification, and risk management precisely because they know that individual intelligence and intuition aren't reliable guides in financial markets. They've learned to distrust their own confidence and rely on processes that work even when their personal judgment is flawed. The antidote to overconfidence isn't becoming less intelligent or less confident in general. It's developing what psychologists call intellectual humility, specifically in financial domains. This means recognizing the limits of your knowledge, seeking out expertise in areas where you lack experience, and being willing to admit when you don't know something. Intellectual humility doesn't mean being passive or avoiding all financial decisions. It means approaching those decisions with appropriate caution and respect for the complexity involved. It means being more likely to choose simple, proven strategies over complex ones that appeal to your sense of sophistication. And it means being willing to pay for good advice, rather than assuming you can figure everything out on your own. Section 4. Confirmation bias in financial decisions. Human beings are not naturally objective. We don't process information like computers, weighing all data equally and arriving at logical conclusions. Instead, we're meaning-making creatures who constantly filter information through the lens of our existing beliefs, hopes, and fears. This tendency, known as confirmation bias, affects everyone, but it can be particularly dangerous for intelligent people who are skilled at finding sophisticated justifications for what they want to believe. Confirmation bias operates in two primary ways. First, we tend to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs while avoiding information that challenges them. Second, when we encounter mixed information, we give more weight to the parts that support our preconceptions and dismiss or rationalize away the parts that don't. In financial decision-making, this creates a particularly treacherous landscape. Consider someone who has decided that a particular stock is a good investment. Once they've made this decision, they unconsciously begin filtering all subsequent information about that company through the lens of their initial judgment. Positive news about the company gets full attention and is seen as validation of their smart choice. Negative news gets minimized, rationalized, or ignored entirely. An earnings miss might be dismissed as temporary. A product recall might be seen as a buying opportunity. Analyst downgrades might be attributed to market manipulation or short seller attacks. This isn't conscious deception, it's unconscious self-deception. The person genuinely believes they're being objective and analytical. But their intelligence, rather than protecting them from bias, actually makes the bias more sophisticated and harder to detect. Smart people are particularly good at what psychologists call motivated reasoning. They can construct elaborate logical frameworks to support conclusions they want to reach. A brilliant engineer might develop complex mathematical models to justify why their favorite cryptocurrency is undervalued, while ignoring simpler explanations for its price movements. The internet and social media have dramatically amplified confirmation bias in financial decision-making. It's now easier than ever to find information that supports any investment thesis, no matter how flawed. Wow. Want to believe that a particular stock is going to moon? You can find forums, YouTube channels, and Twitter accounts that will provide endless confirmation of that belief. Algorithmic content curation makes this even worse. Social media platforms and search engines learn what kind of content you engage with and show you more of the same. If you click on articles about the potential of renewable energy stocks, you'll see more bullish content about renewable energy. If you engage with content about precious metals as inflation hedges, you'll see more gold and silver promotion. This creates what researchers call filter bubbles or echo chambers, where people are primarily exposed to information that reinforces their existing beliefs. For intelligent people, this is particularly dangerous because they often believe they're doing research when they're actually just consuming confirmation of their biases. Consider the phenomenon of meme stocks and retail trading communities. These communities often develop elaborate narratives about why certain stocks are undervalued or manipulated by institutional investors. Members share research, analysis, and theories that support the group's shared beliefs while dismissing or attacking information that contradicts those beliefs. Many participants in these communities are highly intelligent people with advanced degrees and successful careers. But once they've committed to a particular investment thesis, their intelligence becomes a tool for defending that thesis rather than objectively evaluating it. They can construct sophisticated arguments about market manipulation, hidden value, or upcoming catalysts, all while ignoring basic valuation metrics or business fundamentals. Confirmation bias also affects how people interpret their own investment results. Successful investments are attributed to skill and intelligence, while unsuccessful ones are attributed to bad luck, market manipulation, or temporary setbacks. This selective interpretation prevents learning from mistakes and reinforces overconfidence. A day trader who has a few profitable trades might conclude that they've discovered a winning system, while dismissing their losing trades as anomalies. They remember the wins vividly and forget the losses, or rationalize the losses as tuition for learning their system. This biased interpretation of results can lead to increased risk-taking and eventual catastrophic losses. Professional investors and financial institutions have developed systematic approaches to combat confirmation bias. They use devil's advocate processes, where team members are specifically assigned to argue against proposed investments. They conduct pre-mortems, imagining how investments could fail before making them. They use checklists and systematic evaluation criteria to ensure they're considering all relevant factors, not just the ones that support their initial inclinations. Individual investors can adopt similar approaches. Before making an investment, they can actively seek out bear cases and negative analysis. They can ask themselves what evidence would convince them they were wrong and commit to monitoring for that evidence. They can diversify not just their investments, but their information sources, deliberately exposing themselves to viewpoints that challenge their assumptions. The key insight is that confirmation bias isn't a character flaw that smart people should be able to overcome through willpower. It's a fundamental feature of how human cognition works. The solution isn't to try to eliminate it entirely, but to recognize its influence and develop systems that account for it. This might mean being more skeptical of information that confirms what we want to believe, and more open to information that challenges our assumptions. It might mean seeking out diverse perspectives before making important financial decisions. And it might mean accepting that our first instincts about investments are often wrong, even when we can construct intelligent-sounding arguments to support them. The most successful investors aren't those who never experience confirmation bias. They're those who recognize its influence and have developed habits and systems that help them make decisions despite it. They understand that being smart isn't enough if that intelligence is consistently pointed in the wrong direction by unconscious psychological biases. Section 5. The social psychology of money decisions. Money decisions don't happen in isolation. They occur within a complex web of social relationships, cultural expectations, and peer influences that can override even the most careful rational analysis. For intelligent people, this social dimension often represents a blind spot because they're used to making decisions based on logic rather than social dynamics. Consider the power of social proof in financial decision-making. When we see others making certain financial choices, especially others we respect or identify with, we unconsciously assume those choices must be reasonable. This isn't necessarily a conscious thought process. It's more like an automatic assumption that if smart people are doing something, it must make sense. During the housing bubble of the mid-2000s, many intelligent professionals watched their colleagues and neighbors buying increasingly expensive homes with exotic mortgages. Doctors saw other doctors stretching to buy bigger houses. Engineers saw other engineers using interest-only loans to afford homes in better neighborhoods. Lawyers saw other lawyers treating real estate as a can't-lose investment. The social proof was overwhelming. These weren't random strangers making questionable decisions. These were peers with similar education levels and professional success. If Dr. Smith down the hall could afford an $800,000 house on a $200,000 salary, maybe it really was possible. If the successful attorney across the street was flipping properties on the side, maybe real estate really was a path to easy wealth. This social validation made risky financial decisions feel safe and reasonable. People who might have been naturally cautious found themselves taking on enormous debt loads because everyone around them was doing the same thing. The intelligence that served them well in their professional lives actually worked against them here because they could construct sophisticated justifications for decisions that were fundamentally driven by social pressure. Social media has amplified these dynamics exponentially. Platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter provide constant exposure to other people's apparent financial success. We see posts about promotions, new cars, exotic vacations, and real estate purchases. We see stories about investment wins and entrepreneurial successes. What we don't see are the failures, the debt, the financial stress, or the lucky timing that often underlies apparent success. Social media presents a highlight reel of other people's financial lives, creating a distorted picture of what's normal or achievable. For intelligent people, this creates a particularly insidious form of pressure. They're used to being high achievers, and they're surrounded by other high achievers. When they see peers apparently succeeding financially in ways they haven't, it creates a sense of falling behind or missing out that can drive poor decision-making. This might manifest as FOMO, fear of missing out, investing, where someone jumps into cryptocurrency or meme stocks because they see others posting about profits. It might show up as lifestyle inflation, where someone upgrades their spending to match their peer group rather than their actual financial capacity. Or it might appear as career dissatisfaction, where someone leaves a stable job to chase entrepreneurial dreams because they see others apparently succeeding as entrepreneurs. The challenge is that social comparison is often based on incomplete information. We compare our internal reality with others' We know our own financial struggles, debts, and uncertainties, but we only see others' successes and acquisitions. This creates a distorted baseline for what we think we should be achieving. Professional networks can intensify these pressures. In fields like investment banking, law, or medicine, there are often informal expectations about lifestyle and spending that can push people toward financial decisions they can't really afford. That is me. In better. And now. Non. I'll but there. A young lawyer might feel pressure to lease an expensive car to project success to clients, even if it strains their budget. A doctor might feel obligated to live in a prestigious neighborhood to maintain their professional image. These social pressures interact with cognitive biases in dangerous ways. Someone experiencing social pressure to appear successful might engage in confirmation bias, seeking out information that justifies expensive purchases or risky investments. They might fall prey to overconfidence, assuming that because they're successful in their career, they must be capable of generating the income needed to support an elevated lifestyle. The concept of keeping up with the Joneses has evolved in the digital age. It's no longer just about matching your immediate neighbors. It's about matching the curated online presence of your entire professional and social network. This expanded comparison group makes it much harder to maintain perspective about what's actually reasonable or achievable. Intelligent people often believe they're immune to peer pressure because they think of themselves as independent thinkers. But social influence operates largely below the level of conscious awareness. We absorb social norms and expectations without realizing it, and these absorbed standards influence our decisions in ways we don't recognize. The solution isn't to become antisocial or to ignore the legitimate role that social factors play in financial decisions. Instead, it's about developing awareness of how social dynamics influence our thinking and creating systems to counteract their negative effects. This might mean being more intentional about the financial information we consume and the social media we engage with. It might mean seeking out diverse perspectives on financial success, including voices that emphasize contentment and financial security over wealth accumulation. It might mean having honest conversations with trusted friends about financial realities rather than just financial aspirations. Most importantly, it means recognizing that our financial decisions should be based primarily on our own values, goals, and circumstances, not on what others appear to be doing or achieving. Intelligence can help us analyze financial options, but wisdom helps us choose the options that align with our actual lives, rather than the lives we think we should be living based on social comparison. The most financially successful people often aren't those who appear most successful to others. They're those who have learned to make decisions based on their own financial reality, rather than their perception of others' financial reality. They understand that true financial intelligence includes the ability to resist social pressures that push toward poor financial choices, even when those pressures come from other intelligent people. Summary. We've explored a paradox that touches nearly everyone: why intelligence alone doesn't protect us from poor financial decisions. The answer, as we've discovered, lies not in any failure of intelligence itself, but in the complex interplay between our rational minds and the psychological forces that shape all human behavior. Let's trace the key insights we've uncovered. First, we learned about the intelligence trap, how smart people often trust their initial instincts too much, assuming that because they're intelligent, their gut reactions must be sound. We saw how intelligence can actually become a liability when it leads to sophisticated rationalization of emotionally driven decisions rather than genuine analysis. We then explored how emotions hijack our decision-making processes, operating faster than our conscious minds can intervene. The same neural pathways that helped our ancestors survive physical threats now fire when we perceive financial opportunities or dangers. We discovered that emotions aren't the enemy of good financial decisions, but they need to work in partnership with rational analysis rather than overwhelming it. Our examination of overconfidence and the Dunning-Kruger effect revealed how success in one domain can create dangerous blind spots in another. The surgeon who assumes their decision-making skills will translate directly to day trading, or the engineer who believes their analytical abilities make them immune to market psychology, demonstrates how competence in one area can mask incompetence in another. We explored confirmation bias and saw how intelligent people are particularly skilled at motivated reasoning, constructing elaborate logical frameworks to support conclusions they want to reach. Tier 1. The internet age has amplified this tendency, creating echo chambers where any investment thesis can find supporting evidence, regardless of its validity. Finally, we examined the social psychology of money decisions, understanding how peer pressure and social comparison operate largely below conscious awareness. Even highly independent thinkers absorb social norms and expectations that influence their financial choices in ways they don't recognize. These insights paint a picture of human nature that's both humbling and hopeful. Humbling because they show that intelligence alone isn't sufficient for good financial decision-making. Hopeful because they suggest that awareness of these psychological patterns is the first step toward making better choices. The thread that runs through all these phenomena is the gap between knowing and doing. Most intelligent people know, intellectually, that they should diversify their investments, avoid emotional trading, and live below their means. The challenge isn't acquiring more knowledge, it's bridging the gap between intellectual understanding and consistent behavior. This gap exists because financial decisions are never purely intellectual exercises. They're deeply human activities that engage our emotions, our social instincts, our fears, and our aspirations. Intelligence helps us analyze options and understand concepts, but it doesn't automatically override the psychological forces that drive behavior. The most successful approach to financial decision-making isn't to try to become more intelligent or to eliminate emotional responses entirely. It's to develop what we might call psychological intelligence, an understanding of how our minds work and how to work with our psychology rather than against it. This means creating systems and habits that help us make good decisions, even when our emotions are pulling us in other directions. It means seeking out diverse perspectives and actively looking for information that challenges our assumptions. It means recognizing the limits of our knowledge and being willing to seek expert guidance in areas where we lack experience. Most importantly, it means approaching financial decisions with intellectual humility, recognizing that being smart doesn't make us immune to the psychological biases that affect all human beings. The goal isn't perfection. Even with awareness and good systems, we'll still make mistakes. The goal is progress, making fewer mistakes over time and learning from the ones we do make. It's about developing the wisdom to know when to trust our intelligence and when to be skeptical of it. Remember the scenarios we opened with: the brilliant engineer buying cryptocurrency at 2 a.m., the physician panic selling during a market downturn, the lawyer falling for get-rich-quick schemes. These aren't stories about unintelligent people making stupid decisions. They're stories about intelligent people being human. Understanding this distinction is liberating. It means that if you've made poor financial decisions despite being smart, you're not fundamentally flawed. You're experiencing the normal tension between human psychology and the demands of modern financial decision-making. And with awareness of these patterns, you can begin to make choices that align with both your intelligence and your humanity. Otrom. The journey toward better financial decision-making isn't about becoming smarter. You're already smart enough. It's about becoming wiser about the relationship between intelligence and behavior, between knowing and doing. As you move forward, Consider carrying this awareness with you. Your intelligence is a powerful tool, but it works best when paired with humility about its limitations. The smartest financial decision you can make might be recognizing when you need systems, advice, or simply time to think, rather than trusting your immediate instincts. The patterns we've explored today don't disappear with understanding, but they do become more manageable. When you feel the pull of overconfidence or the pressure of social comparison, you'll have the awareness to pause and ask whether your emotions or your analysis are driving the decision. Financial wisdom isn't about never making mistakes. It's about making mistakes you can learn from and recover from, rather than mistakes that derail your long-term financial well-being. Take some time to reflect on these ideas. Consider which patterns might be most relevant to your own financial decision-making. And remember, the goal isn't to eliminate your humanity from financial decisions, but to make decisions that honor both your intelligence and your psychological reality. Thank you for taking this journey into the fascinating intersection of psychology and money. The awareness you've gained today is the foundation for better financial decisions tomorrow.